Hey everybody. So my name is Quentin Contreras. I'm a senior application engineer here at KETIV, and what I want to be showing everyone today is the new features of Plant 3D 2026. So a lot of changes have happened with this new release. A little bit about myself. As I was saying, my name is Quentin Contreras. I'm a senior application engineer here at KETIV, basically meaning that I do support, I do training, also specify specific workflows for some of our customers, whether it be plant or some of our other applications that we offer through the Autodesk product line. But background about me, I have 20 plus years in the drafting and design experience in the oil and gas industry. And also I was working for Autodesk for about 11 years, doing kind of the same thing there as well. And I've also taught high school. I taught high school drafting for about 5 years, teaching CAD to high school kids. That being said, one of the offerings that we do have here at KETIV that I participate in is training classes. So some of the things you might be seeing today might be the first time, or you might be a new user to Plant, or you might be interested in using Plant. And we do offer training, which I am a certified trainer to do Plant 3D for AutoCAD. And also I do AutoCAD, plain AutoCAD, core AutoCAD, and also electrical, but we do have other offerings as well with our other Autodesk product lines with some of my other colleagues that do kind of the same thing I do as well. So let's go ahead and get started. So I've broken this down kind of into two parts with what's new for Plant 3D 2026. So first part is going to be revealing the new interface that's been included with this new release of Plant 3D 2026, just to get you familiar with it, because it has changed a bit. Still same functionality, but you'll notice the difference. Also, into part two, some of the modeling changes. So some of the pipe modeling that you'd be doing, some of those options have changed with the interface, and also the Spec Editor part of it as well has gone through a major redesign as well. Still the same functionality, but basically I think it seems like they've incorporated some of the changes that some of the users like yourself have been asking for over the years that they wanted to see. So let's dive into this. So as I said, it comes with a full range of improvements to the interface that's happened with this newest release of 2026. And you'll notice it right away as you're getting into the program for the first time if you haven't had a chance to look at 2026 yet. As I was saying, there's some subtle changes to the UI interface. A lot of it's in the Spec Editor. There's some changes to Ortho's, the piping modeling, of course, the P&ID side, and they also did some changes in the collaboration, the ACC part of it as well. So let's jump into the first one. So one of the first things you'll notice is traditionally when you would go into the P&ID program with the user interface here, for instance, on the control valve browser, whenever you're selecting a control valve to use to insert into a drawing, you would see just the initial part of the valve body that you're going to now. But now with the new improved UI, the display of the icons for all the valve bodies and actuator classes are shown in here. So you also get the visual representation of what it looks like, but then also the description as well for both the body and the actuator. So that's an improvement. That helps out a lot more with what you're trying to select to put into your drawing. So, and then also when you're going through and making the selection process, you do get a preview as well. That's something that was added too that wasn't fully there as well. So a lot of little aids to help you as you're going through the process. That way you know exactly what you're inserting into your P&ID drawing. So that's the one thing about the catalog valve browser that has changed. It's a good one. I like this one a lot. The other thing is the actuator browser itself. So it displays icons for all actuator classes. So when you go in and you're looking at a valve or you're needing to, put in an actuator, you can actually see the different actuators as well. So the one that I showed you previously with the control valve is kind of bled over to this part to where you can actually see the actuator browser here, when you're selecting a valve and then looking over here within the classes with the ones that are available. And these would be the ones that you would load into your project, setup, whatever you have listed there for items of actuators that you can use. Those would be the ones that you're seeing over here now. So the next thing we have here is convert to P&ID object. So your P&ID convert command that you would typically use. Here you'll see the dialog box when you're going to the convert command, and then you're actually able to go see the individual items that you want to convert it to. So a big change here as well. That way you have more of an idea of what you're selecting when you're doing that conversion from, an AutoCAD object to a smart P&ID object that you're converting it to. So that kind of gives you more of a visual representation of what you're actually doing, other than just, having to remember which class, what looks like what, and then having to go through, traditionally you would go through the list here and try to find it here. So what I've shown here is kind of, I'd have it AutoCAD P&ID block over here, and then I go through the command, and this is what you're going to see now when you invoke that P&ID convert command. So the other change that's happened here is within the project setup. If you notice over here, when you go into the project setup, so you'd be going over here to your P&ID object mapping underneath your P&ID Plant 3D drawing settings. And here you would have your P&ID object mapping, your P&ID classes, and then this is just kind of showing the hand valves up here. But the one thing that has changed with this setup is that now it allows you to map P&ID parent classes to 3D classes with the change that's happened in 2026. So this has eliminated the need to set mapping rules for individual child classes that wasn't available, that you'd have to go through previously. And also you can acquire the mapping from the parent class or override it by clicking the icon before, the Plant 3D property options. So these little icons here, you could still go through and, override if needed on some of these items as well. So pretty handy here. I know that's one thing that I was always, asked about, doing certain things with the mapping, and just there were some limitations on what you could do and couldn't do, but obviously they made some changes here to help with some of that object mapping that wasn't there before. So another good change that's happened with the P&ID class object mapping that's been included. Also building on this and adding to this as well, additionally, what you would do is you can hold, your Alt key and click the icon to reset all properties either to acquisition or override as well. So right now, as you know, that, these little icons here that have the little lightning bolt kind of symbol, these are the ones that you're acquiring the information for. The other ones here with the pencils, these would be the ones that, you've overwritten something already. So if you wanted to, switch these or reset them, that's how you would go through the process with those items that you would have there in regards to that. The other thing that's changed, if you haven't noticed yet, with the P&ID modeler performance, it can kind of vary sometimes with, what the speed is and everything. And depending on the complexity of your P&ID model, you might see, and depending on, graphics and RAM and everything, you might notice some, performance issues that you might have. And one of the things I did to address this is now you can enable GSF or P&ID modeler for better performance by using the plant line list use GSF system variable. So that's going to determine whether to enable the fast shade mode for P&ID modeler to improve the navigation of performance. So basically, when you would go into, if you go into the plant line list, use GSF, you're going to have two options there because this is a system variable. So it's either going to be option one, which would disable the fast shaded mode for P&ID modeler, or 1 to enable the fast shade mode for P&ID modeler. So if you notice, if you're using this, and if you do notice some, some lagging or some things that, just should seem a little bit faster, you can try disabling or if it's already disabled, try enable it and see, if you notice a difference, that's going to improve any of that. So definitely something that they've known to address, and hopefully this helps ease some of that, some of the things that some users were running into when using the P&ID modeler when it came to performance with navigating through that within their models. The other thing, this one I'm really happy with. It's one that's always been kind of frustrating that you weren't able to do, but you're actually able to go into the project setup now and rename a project. So previously, in previous versions before 2026, so like 2025 and before, whenever you would go into your project setup and look at your project details over here under your general settings, you could see your project name. But the project name could never be changed. This area here was grayed out to where it wasn't able to edit this particular cell item right here, which had the project name. Can't kind of tell in this, but you can tell that, these are white down here to where you can type in information and change it. But up here, this one's grayed out. But with the release of 2026, now you're able to change the project name. So that's pretty handy. And a lot of people I've known in the past, and especially myself, have kind of wished that, that was easier to do, to be able to change that project name. So now simply you just have to, when you go to the project setup and to the general settings and project details, this is enabled now to where you can go and change actually the project name of this. So pretty handy. That's been asked for over the years, and they finally were able to incorporate that into one of the latest update, or should I say releases, to be able to have users be able to do that. So I like that one. I kind of been wishing that one for a while, and now it's there. So it's a good thing on the Plant 3D side. All right. The other thing that I like as well, one of my other favorite ones, is within the project setup as well. When you go to general settings over here and go to your paths, you typically could see the paths for the different project paths that it would list down here. But the first one here, your project symbol styles drawing. So it lists the path where that's located, but now they've included an edit drawing button here. So within this button here, you can open the project setup symbol style drawing. So there's no longer the need of opening the drawing by itself and then navigating to wherever that might be. And that can be cumbersome, especially if you're, not remembering exactly, having to go through the hierarchy folder structure of finding where that project resides, and then finding the project symbol style drawing to be able to edit it. Here, it already knows the path on where that project symbol style drawing is at, and then you can just select the button and it's going to open it up for you. And just to recap, but remember your project symbol style drawing is where all of your P&ID blocks are located. So that's typically the drawing you're going to go into to create new content. So new customized content. That's the drawing you're going to go into in order to edit that particular drawing. So if you do any customization, or if you're considering doing customization, this is where this button's going to come in handy now, to where that's the drawing you're going to go to navigate those type of things. So like I said, I like this one. It's definitely a little bit of a time saver as well. The other thing here is that they've included is managing the selection list. So typically when you're in the project setup and you're setting up particular types of list, for instance, services and piping specs and statuses and different, these different ones. So those of you that have done customization and gone into this, you should know that, going through the list can be a little bit cumbersome in what you're trying to create and everything. But some of the recent enhancements to the list provides more flexibility and more efficiency. So one of the things they've done is added a shared selection list for P&ID and 3D classes. So sharing them together with each other, opposed to them just being isolated to just specifically P&ID or Plant 3D selection lists. So that's kind of handy to be able to have that in order for them to be shared with, both, the P&ID and Plant 3D portion of this. So that does come in handy. And also within the selection box here, when you go through this process, most of it's pretty familiar, but also you get this new create shared selection list as you're going through that. So if you're going through this process, you're going to add a list, you're going to create a new selection list, and then you're going to select here to create a shared selection list. Once you do that, once it's created, then you're going to get this little icon here that shows it's a shared selection list that can be shared between the both, the P&ID classes and the 3D classes. So pretty handy that you have all that. So, but just remember, if it's going to be a shared list, you have to make sure that you do check or not check, that box appropriately on what you're going to be wanting to do with it. So pretty handy there. Little good enhancement that they've done with the selection list. Don't think they've done anything with that for a while, so that's another good one to see. And then finally, the other thing is with that selection list, you can export specific selection lists, or all of them if you need to an Excel spreadsheet. So that's going to allow you the flexibility, especially if you have a longer list or if you already have an existing list in Excel, perhaps already set up. If you wanted to import those or export them to, more quickly edit them. So, for instance, if you're familiar, like the data manager or stuff in the spec editor, you do have the option to export and import items to an Excel list to be able to edit those lists a little bit quicker than you could, here in the plant project setup environment. It's a little bit more cumbersome, but being able to do this, that's kind of expedites the process. If you're going to be creating a longer list and need to edit a list or need to make changes to a list, at least you can export it and then make your changes in Excel and then import it back in. So that does save you some time. So another good thing that they've added here to be able to do that. That way it does, alleviate the time that you would normally spend on trying to make some of those edits to your list. And then also, there's been a redesign on the project backup, which has been good. Typically in the past, you would do a project backup if you've done this before, and pretty much cut and dry. You just pick it, tell it where it's going, and then it does it for you. With this one now, you can change the save location for the current project, or open the backup location at the end of the backup for the process as well. The other thing that's kind of good with this is if other users check out project setup or drawings and collaboration projects, the dialog displays a warning message. You can still proceed with the backup, but unsaved changes are not included in there. So just be aware of that, especially if you're working in a collaboration project, those things can, that's what's going to happen in that scenario. But it still allows you to run that backup if you are just needing to, for whatever reason, if you're just needing to do that backup, it's still going to allow you to do that. So that added functionality of that has been added to that. And plus some other things that it goes through as it's checking, you can see there, you get more of a checklist here on, exactly what it's doing and what's happening here. Before, it didn't give you all this extra detailed information. So having this here now gives you a little bit more peace of mind of what actually is happening with the project backup as it's going through the process now. I like this one as well. Like I said, previous versions of doing the backup were kind of cumbersome. Well, not really cumbersome, but just didn't reveal exactly everything that it was backing up or give you a clear indication of the process it was going through. So I like this format a little bit better. And then finally, also as well, there's been a redesign of the audit project. So as you know, when you have a project and you might be needing to clean it up or remove any maybe residual information that might be affecting something going wrong with one of your drawings or just a project in general. So the audit project will go through and, clear some of that stuff. But the format of this has changed as well with the dialog box interface that's been included as well. So it displays when you right click on a project manager and you audit the project, or just go through the audit project command to run it. Once you start it and view, you can view the process, and then once completed, you can check the log file as well to review the audit details that have gone through what it actually did to it as well. So once again, some added detail on what it's actually doing, what it's actually finding. That's going to help you, maybe identify some problem areas that you might need to look out for in the future as you're working through a project to maybe not run into those things that could affect your project. So pretty handy tool there as well, that they've added some more detailed information on and added more to the function of the audit project tool. All right, so that's the first part. There's a lot there. There's a lot that they've included in this 2026 release. Following up, I'll be doing another demo as well on the second half of what's been included with 2026, specifically going into the pipe modeling and also into the spec editor changes that have been done there. But thank you. I appreciate your time and look forward to speaking more with you.